That's awesome. All right. Well, I think we can go ahead and get started. Feel free to keep commenting in the chat if we haven't heard from you yet. But again, welcome everybody. Hello, my name is Liz. I'm the Customer Engagement Coordinator here at Wodify. I'm very excited to have NCFIT's Jason, Matt, and Gabe with me today to go over the benefits and tips for incorporating bodybuilding into your programming, plus effective strategies for programming for BJJ, tactical competitions, Hyrox-style races, all the works. So before we dive in, I just wanted to point out a few Zoom things to note. If you look on the bottom of your screen, you'll see a chat, Q&A, and reactions tab. So for chat, going to be throwing some things in there throughout this. Feel free to use that as a space to interact with both NCFIT, other owners on the webinar today. For Q&A, please submit questions in there throughout the webinar. The team will answer. And during Q&A, we'd love for you to use the raise hand feature. So in reactions as pictured here, if you navigate to the reactions tab, click raise hand, that'll let us know when you have a question or comment, and we can unmute you and you can actually talk to us live. So if you've been on a webinar before, you know we love that. We love hearing your voices. So please feel free to chime in with any questions. That's it from me. So I will pass it over to Gabe to get started.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. And thank you everyone that is on the webinar, everyone that's kind of shared where they're from. It's really cool to see all the different places people are tuning in from. But I'm personally super excited for this topic. I have kind of like a personal tie to what we're going to talk about here because I author our Flex bodybuilding program, which is included in the NCFIT affiliate programming that we offer. But really, we just wanted to talk, kind of take a step back and just talk in general about offering this specific alternate type of training at your gym. So whether you're doing it, and MDB is going to really dive into some case studies and gym owners that he's talked to that are doing this as a class. We're going to share how we're doing it at our locations, which is more of a value add that people have been doing in open gym. Pros and cons to both. There's, I think, a really good case for approaching it in both ways. But that's kind of what we're going to dive into today. And we do want to make this super, super interactive. So just to highlight what Liz said, please, we love questions. Please add those to the Q&A box. Ideally not the chat because it's a little easier to navigate, but I will be looking at both. And we'll hopefully spend a bunch of time in the back end, at least 10 minutes, but hopefully actually half of the webinar answering specific questions, because I think that's where we can provide the most value. But we wanted to open up this discussion with, first, I do want to do just really quick intro. So obviously, everyone knows Jason here, CEO and founder of NCFIT, been around for a really long time. And MDV is our chief fitness officer. So he's in charge of all things, the actual product that you guys get access to, the programming, the session plans, all that really good stuff comes from MDV and his team. And I do all of our marketing. So we'll just keep that nice and brief. But let's dive in. So first thing we want to talk about here is why providing alternative programming like bodybuilding can be beneficial for your gym. And MDB, why don't you kick us off with that?
Yeah, thank you, Gabe. So a little bit of history on the Flex program. In 2021, we launched NC Flex formally, and it went out to all of our subscribers in the NCFIT programming and coaching development subscription. And one of the main reasons that we wanted to bring that program to life is that all three of us, our training goals have somewhat changed over the years. I've dabbled in CrossFit for a really, really long time, started in the early 2000s. It was my primary training mechanism for many, many years. And at some point along that journey, I got pulled in a couple of different directions for whether it was other types of competition or pursuing BJJ. And then I had a pretty serious hip injury that took my intensity in training down for quite some time. And utilizing a program like bodybuilding and NC Flex in particular really helped me stay on track with my own goals, helped me stay mentally focused, helped me stay physically dialed in. And I think that was one of the things that we reflected on when, for many, many years, we only offered a CrossFit style program to our athletes. And in offering this other type of solution, it allowed people for various reasons to dive into a type of training that maybe they just needed to take a little bit of a break from the intensity that we all know and love in a CrossFit class. Maybe they had some different training goals that they wanted to experiment with for a short period of time and then come back. But right now, what we do with our NC Flex program, or Flex, is we offer it as an open gym solution for our athletes. So our main offering in the NCFIT gyms is the NCFIT workout, and we offer 2 different versions of that workout: a performance version, which has the ability for athletes to experiment with higher complexity movements, heavier loading, more volume. And then we have a fitness version, which is a more moderate expression of that program. We present those side by side to our athletes every single day in our classes. But we have many athletes within our gym who utilize the Flex program in our open gym. And it's a great way for them, if, like I said before, wanting to take a step back from some of the intensity and be able to just experiment with a different type of training. And we've all seen some of the proliferation of these different types of training out there right now. I think it's much more of a wide audience that's looking for this kind of stuff. So we're really happy to be able to offer it as a solution for our athletes in that manner.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what I can provide is just so that we're clear on what it is that this program actually like is and how does it differentiate from the more GPP CrossFit type class that we're offering as the class offering. Flex is essentially more linear progression. It's programmed every cycle, 6-week cycle backs up right up against another 6-week cycle. We're constantly seeing the same movements and honestly the same sessions in kind of a week A, week B format. So every 6-week cycle is going to have, all right, you see week A, you see week B, and that's going to repeat 3 times. So something that's very, very, not very, but definitely different than what people are going to experience by coming to our classes. We still have some kind of cycles and building there, but it's not as structured and doesn't lean as much on linear progressions. And I think that that's what tends to feel fresh for people, feels different, and also like has really helped some people that we've seen at our locations break through some of these training plateaus where, you know, they've been doing it long enough and they've definitely seen progress, but they're getting to a point where they do need a little bit of more structured strength and hypertrophy training to kind of see the body composition changes, or honestly, just like take a break from the 3-2-1 go and the score and the time, which again, I think we do a really good job on the program that we do of not making that the end all be all of every single day of our GPP program. But it is nice to have something where like, hey, there is no score, even if it's an EMON, even if it's an AMRAP, even if it's for quality, like there's no score attached to this type of training. What we want you to do is really like work on this muscle group here, try and do this with this tempo. And I think that that's given people a really, really good way to continue training very hard and progress without some of the things that maybe have caused a little bit of burnout that are all great in the beginning. But that's kind of in a nutshell how Flex is different from what we offer in our GPP program and why I think it's been so popular with our members, you know, to do in open gym. And Jason, I know you've heard from one particular member that comes to mind that I think is a really good example of exactly this. Like, how long has that member been with us? The progress she's seen in the beginning, but now kind of like the progress she's seen by doing this in open gym.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that as a gym owner, if you had asked me in 2008, you know, full throttle every day, all day. And, you know, to be perfectly honest, it's pretty much still the way I train, but adding in some flex has been really good for me and really good for our members because it also starts to have you look at fitness in a slightly different way, which I think is a lot of value. So for example, in CrossFit, it's really about work capacity, is doing as much as possible in a given amount of time. And you can be dynamic in your structure, right? So if you're trying to get max clean and jerks, you're going to want to utilize your hip. You're going to want to utilize the muscles to get a load overhead. But I find that what's really unique about flex is that it forces me to think different. Instead of me saying, how many reps can I get in a certain amount of time? It's now, how do I connect my brain with a specific muscle group and really start to create some hypertrophy there, really start to isolate that muscle. And I found that, at least for me, it's been a nice way to change pace and to explore my body in different ways. Instead of just like, hey, how much work can we get done? Now it's like, wait, to win is actually to really exhaust that muscle versus get more work done. It's just a different way of looking at it. But in regards to like our athletes, you know, I think that our gym, I opened the gym in 2008. So what is that? 16 years. Well, after 16 years, I think that it's not only inevitable, but I'd also say probably healthy for athletes to want to explore ventures, right? And maybe they come in, they do CrossFit 3 days a week, but they're also then incorporating maybe some marathon running, or maybe they want to try a Hyrox, or maybe they're interested in other types of sports or different things. And I think that's what allows people to be consistent for a lifetime. But for us, we wanted to provide a solution if people wanted to like aesthetically look. And I know that in CrossFit, it's like, hey, look, train hard and you're going to look good as a byproduct. That's true. I still agree with that. But I do think there's people that want to just say, hey, I want to get bigger. I want to grow muscle size and I want to slow it down and go bodybuilding. We had a particular member. It's been fascinating for me to watch. She's probably been a member of our gym for at least 10 years. And I'd say about a year ago, she committed to flex, and her physical shape and the way that her body has adjusted has been like nothing I've ever seen before, actually. And so it's just an example of how your members can be doing the classes and then supplement some additional days with some flex during open gym. And that's what we're doing at our gyms. And I found it to be a great added benefit for those people who want that type of stimulus. Flex is a great solution.
Yeah, and body composition aside, talking about that specific member that you're talking about, because she sent me a really, really cool message. But even things like acquiring skills like strict pull-ups and things that we do work in our GPP program, like we're touching those things. We recognize the value of not just doing the dynamic versions of those, but it's just so much better, and you're going to get better at that so much quicker if you're literally following a program that, okay, we're going to do strict pull-ups, weighted pull-ups, bent over rows and stuff, and progress week over week. You're adding 5 pounds, you're adding 10 pounds. Giving people that structure, I think is a way to almost like cheat code your way to getting some of those skills that elude some people. So that's been really cool, because it's not just a body composition benefit side, but it's literally like, hey, I've been doing this training for, being a member for 10 years. And then I did this for 1 year and now I'm busting out strict pull-ups. And that was really, really cool for her. So anyway, that's a really cool case study. But the other question that I had is, I know that we mentioned that we're running this as open gym and it's a value add and our members are really loving it. MDB, I know you've talked to a specific gym owner that's actually running this as a class. So they're actually, they're coaching this. It's a class. It's a big offering for them. Tell us a little bit about what has been successful there. And I know it's something that we're considering doing. It's just right now, given where we're at, we have a very robust CrossFit schedule, and it's not like any of those are lightly attended. So it's more of like a figuring out where it makes sense to fit something in. But it's really cool that you've talked to a gym owner that's doing this and doing this well.
Yeah, it's actually my girlfriend's gym. She runs CrossFit One Society. She's the head coach and owner. They run an aesthetics class, and they run it 3 times a week on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They have a morning and an evening offering for that class. And it's run in the mornings. It's a little bit more of an open schedule where athletes can come in during the open gym period and start the aesthetics class. And then they wrap up all at the same time before the 9 a.m. class starts. But in the evening, it's run on a 1-hour time slot with a coach who's there to guide the athletes through the workout for the entire time. And it's been really fascinating to see. It's some of the more highly attended classes, and the vibes are fantastic in that class. I've taken that class multiple times, and it's not so different from running your CrossFit workout. You're there as the coach to guide the athletes. You're demonstrating some of the movements. You're focusing, in particular, when I was discussing this with her, she focuses like on one element of the movement and will demonstrate it and then allow the athletes to try to feel that out as they go through it. And then it's kind of rolling as you go through the class. And as the class goes on, there's different pauses in the time periods where the athletes will look at the demonstration, and it runs amazingly well. And it's really cool to see the athletes have a lot of time to interact with one another. There's a lot of joking around. There's a lot of camaraderie that's going on. And we all know that that exists in CrossFit classes, but when the actual workout is going on in a CrossFit class, it's not often easy to have that kind of connection between the athletes. And almost throughout the entire class, you see that happen with this particular aesthetics class. One of the cool things that I've noticed also in this is that she has members that exclusively come in for this now, and they are full-time members, and this is the class that they take 3 days a week. And she also has members that supplement the bodybuilding with her CrossFit style training as well. So it's cool to see that she's servicing those people who continue to want to have CrossFit as their main training mechanism and use this a couple times a week, or have now switched to solely using this aesthetics program as their main way of training, which is really, really cool. And having that diverse offering has done really well for her business. So it's very cool to see both sides. At NCFIT, like we said, we run it as an open gym program where our athletes have access to Flex via the Wodify platform. They get to see it and they get to utilize it as they see fit during open gym. And I've also seen it work really well in a class environment.
Yeah, and with running it as a class, I'll get in front of maybe a question that'll come up. So the programming is written so that it can absolutely be done in 60 minutes and can honestly be done in as little as 45 minutes. And I would venture to say that if you're trying to run this as a 60-minute class, you probably want to go with the 45-minute version, give you a little bit more time to like coach and logistics and stuff like that. But the way that I write the program is everything from the strength portion to the bodybuilding portion is almost always written in a set range. So it'll always have like 3 to 4 sets of these movements, 4 to 5 sets of these movements, 2 to 3. And I do that very intentionally because if you always go on the lower end of that, that's where I kind of write it so that it can be done in 45 minutes. If you're doing the high end of that, which is pretty much just an extra set per superset or per movement, you're more on the 60-minute range. So just a little bit of background there on how I write it and what I'm thinking about in terms of time domain if you're thinking of running this as a class. So we do have some questions coming in. I think, the only other thing that we wanted to touch on, and then I definitely want to get to these questions. You kind of alluded to this, MDV, but is the coaching style of this type of workout really that different? What would you say is the biggest thing that you're doing differently? And maybe this ties a little bit into the first question that I have here from Paulius, and is, are we ever planning to incorporate class planning, so the session plans, like what we have in the NCFIT workout side, to something like Flex?
Well, I think, I wanted to say this earlier too, and I think that there's a little bit of a paradigm shift in fitness that like we can all admit to, is that like bodybuilding is not spaghetti string tank tops and eating like little vitamins out of your fanny pack and like doing all those kind of weird things in the locker room. Like it's a legitimate style of training and there's legitimate movement patterns that go along with it. It's different from CrossFit for sure, but like you're still coaching movement. You're showing the athletes how to do the movement properly. And I know that the way that we program Flex, there's functional movements included there. And functional strength is the first element of that workout almost every day. And then there's a bodybuilding portion after that, which mainly takes a little bit more of like the isolation approach. So you are looking at movement, you're looking at coaching movement, you're looking at points of performance. It's a little bit different insofar that, hey, you might not be coaching as many dynamic movements or as many hip-driven movements, but you're still going to see the squat, the deadlift, the press. Good amount of coaching that can go on. I see.
MDV, you're breaking up a little bit.
I think where he was going was like, dude, there's still a lot of complexity, a lot of things you can coach through the Flex program, 100%. And, I think one area that I would encourage, I just, I think that adding this into the schedule could be a really great option for some gyms. I think a gym owner should just be open-minded into understanding that, like MDV was alluding to or saying, like, I think that CrossFit created this structure early on where like bodybuilding was bad. And I think that as the sport has evolved, you even see some athletes that are competing at the CrossFit Games adding in isolated movements, adding in bodybuilding. And so I think that if you're an owner out there recognizing that, like, dude, a lot of these different pathways, they all have value. How do you want to incorporate them into your program or into your schedule? I think it's kind of up to you to decide. But I would take your time with it and make sure that if you do decide to roll it out, that you do it intentionally and that you do it really thought-provokingly to make sure it's the right fit for your community.
Yeah. And to piggyback off of what MDV was talking about in the coaching aspect of something like this.
Sorry, guys. I don't know if I froze or you guys froze, but somebody froze.
All good. All good. We're happy to have you back. The piece that I was going to piggyback off of is I think that there are such cool opportunities to coach in a more in-depth way. Going back to what Jason was saying before, there's just so much, like, I mean, I've been doing this programming as how I train exclusively for coming up on like about 2 years. And just now I'm starting to like really, really click with literal things like, hey, when I do a bent over row, I'm not trying to use my bicep, I'm trying to use my lat. And there's so much, like, it's a different skill. Like, we talk all the time on the GPP side of, like, you know, we're trying to teach these skills like muscle ups, and they take a lot of time. But there's this like very, very skill intensive side of these movements, which is, are you working the correct muscle that you're intended to work with that movement? And I think that there's a real opportunity there for us as coaches to teach people this awareness using tactile cues, using like little things like, hey, row not to your shoulder, but to your belly button, and seeing that progress over time. I think is a really cool, different way to coach people high skill movements, not in how maybe we've used high skill movements coming from the CrossFit side, you know, your usual high skill gymnastics or Olympic lifts, but hey, can you work the right muscle groups when you do this movement? And there's so much value to that from an injury prevention side, even from like helping people with those GPP type skills, because if it's teaching you body awareness, that's only going to help with all these other things. If you know what it means to engage your lat, to engage your glutes, all of that good stuff. So I think there's just, and obviously maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I think there is so much good to this type of training and coaching this type of training. Anything you guys wanted to add? If not, I'm going to get to the next question here.
No, all good.
Cool. So Sarah Hansen, who, if I remember correctly, you're my neighbor from San Marcos, doing flex for 6 months and would like to introduce it to class at our gym. Do you anticipate adding coaching notes, specifically the time allotments, in the near future? So as of now, and I'll let MDV kind of correct me if I'm wrong, there are no plans to add session plans to this program specifically. I think that it is just a matter of, you know, if you've been doing it for your training, you probably know this, but it really just breaks down to, like, when I go out and do this, it's 20 minutes for the strength and I give myself 40 minutes for the bodybuilding piece. And like I said, you can tie back on the set range to give you a little bit more time, and then, you know, do the full, if you have the full 60 minutes. So that's kind of the advice that I would give you. But currently there are no plans to add session plans to that program specifically. Next question from Barry. Would offering this type of program at the same time as standard CrossFit program work? For instance, it would be on the Wodify screen as an option for a daily workout. MDV, I'm curious your thoughts on this one.
Oh, I think that it depends on how you want your athletes to experience fitness in your gym. I don't think necessarily it would work for us to have that uploaded side by side with the NCFIT workout for the day, just because it would be a lot of scrolling. It could be confusing for a lot of gyms that don't want to run things that way. But you always have the ability, if you are a subscriber through Wodify, to pull whatever you'd like into your screens and display the programming the way that you want to display it. So you could Frankenstein together whatever you wanted from what we offer, including the NCFIT workout, compete, flex, and go, and present whatever you'd like to your athletes. The way that we present our programming to our subscribers is as clean as we can make it. So the NCFIT workouts presented, like I said, with performance and fitness. Then you have the compete program presented separately, but that aligns with the CrossFit programming for us. We have the go program presented separately from that, and then flex presented separately.
Awesome.
Go ahead, Gabe. Jason. I think that kind of falls into the, you know, Barry was asking, like, can half people do one workout and half people do the other? And just speaking from experience, this is years and years ago, we would have people do, when we were following CrossFit.com, this is like many years ago, I would have some people doing, on the rest days, I'd have some people doing one workout and some people doing another workout. It became a logistical and coaching nightmare to have people doing different things. And it felt very, it created this culture where, like, one started to seem better than the other, or one workout was better than the other. And so I would just be sensitive to having anybody in your gym, especially in the same environment or same class, doing two different things. Now, if it's two different classes, like, that's totally different. But if it's the same class, but you're having different people do different workouts, I would probably suggest against that. I think there's a different way you could do that.
Yeah, really, really good points there. From experience, speaking from experience. So Kelsey met Jason and Matt, I think at the Two Brain Summit is what you're referring to. Thank you for the talk. Thinking of adding flex, so really cool there. The question is, you know, how do the programs kind of interact with each other? So how is flex written with the NCFIT workout into consideration? So if you're going to roll out flex Monday, Wednesday, Friday, is there a chance that, you know, you might have the same movement on a Monday and then a Tuesday in the different programs? So I can speak to this, and they are written completely separate of each other. So there's absolutely the possibility for there to be some movement redundancies. However, it's easy to get in front of that because of the structure of flex. So what I mean by that is we're currently in a 6-week cycle with that week A, week B. You know that Monday is a bench day, Tuesday we're front squatting, Wednesday we're doing like a push pull, Thursday's a rest day, Friday we're doing strict press, and Saturday we're doing deadlift. That's not going to change for 6 weeks. So the benefit of that is that you have that information beforehand. So as you incorporate that with the NCFIT workout, you'll just have an easier time getting in front of that stuff, but we don't necessarily do that for you. So we're not necessarily writing both tracks, assuming that you're going to be running one Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the other one the other days, and trying to remove the redundancies. But you get the programming focus well in advance. You'll know what the bodybuilding breakdown is going to look like, what the flex strength breakdown is going to look like, which days are going to fall where. So it's pretty easy to get in front of that and make sure that you're moving things around so that that's not an issue. That's what I can kind of share there. Seth, will there be a variation in bodybuilding philosophies, such as volume-based or more high intensity? I love when people ask me geeky questions about bodybuilding. I have 2 books on my desk, and one of them is Arnold Schwarzenegger's Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding. I love geeking out about this stuff. So yes, I can talk about this at length, but I'll keep it super, super bare bones. Currently, the way I write flex for the entire year is we're always alternating from exactly what you said, an intensity bias and a volume bias every 6-week cycle. So in a quarter, we'll have 2 6-week cycles with a deload week, every quarter being 13 weeks. One will always be a volume biased cycle. And then we rest that, well, we let that recover a little bit and we go more in intensity focus. So we're always biasing strength or biasing hypertrophy for 6 weeks and then rinse and repeating and doing the other. It's a good way to kind of like get the benefits of that specific bias and then let that recover, let like the joints recover from all the volume, let the central nervous system recover from all the intensity, and then we kind of switch to the other one. So yes, we do alternate that throughout the entire year and alternate between the two. Jason, we are limited on space and class time during CrossFit. Our facility is 4,000 square feet. Besides open gym, do you have a class that shares the CrossFit space? If so, how did that work out?
You want me to answer this one?
Yeah.
We've tried every class that I could possibly think about in almost every size space you can imagine. In 4,000 square feet, unless there's a partitioned wall, it would be difficult to run separate classes. It would be a little bit conflicting in terms of music and coaching and whatnot. I would say in that environment, creating a culture where like open gym is maybe on one side and then you have the class, but I still think like in 4,000 square feet, unless there's some type of like partition or obvious reason why there's like a delineation, it does become sometimes confusing and a little bit distracting for the athletes that are taking class. So just be aware of that and create a culture where, hey, the class is taking priority and you guys are doing open gym. But what you don't want is a cool kids club to start taking over. Like, historically, this is like a competitor's class. A bunch of competitors would be in the corner doing open gym, and then they start making a bunch of noise while you're trying to coach class. You just want to be aware of that. I think if it's a flex, if it's a bodybuilding, and it's more of like they know that, hey, the class is the priority, I think it's good to go and it's awesome. But there's ways you can set up the room to also encourage that, where you can start making partitions using rowers or machines, and or actually building like a false wall to have an area where people could be doing other things while you're coaching class. But I would be very concerned if I was you in just making sure that the culture always recognizes that the coach in the class takes priority over anything else that is occurring in that space. And that's important to start.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay. Aaron, is it better to be a coach-led program or offer the programming to members like we do in an open gym situation? I'll see if these guys have anything to add, but I think that, what we spoke about before is that there's clear kind of pros and cons to both. And I think that your specific circumstances are going to really dictate that. Like we were talking about this before we hit record, but a reason that we're thinking about doing this, but haven't quite done it yet is because we offer like a very, very robust CrossFit class schedule that is not sparsely attended. So for us, it's kind of like, where are we pulling one of our NCFIT workout classes down to replace it with a bodybuilding class because people are clearly coming for that. Now, there might be an opportunity to get creative there in the future, but for us, it just doesn't make sense right now for it to be coach led, and we're having a lot of success. But MDV mentioned, you know, that one gym that's very successful. And I thought the most interesting part of that was that they now have people that are coming in and joining as full members specifically for that class. So I think I know it's always a super unsatisfying answer, but the answer is it depends. And I don't think that there's a very clear, like, hey, I would want this to be coach led, or I just want this to be something members are doing in an open gym. Anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, CrossFit One Society does it really well, and they offer it 6 times a week. So twice a day on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, which is a great amount of offerings for the size of their gym, the size of their membership. And it's something that the members have really latched onto. And like Gabe was saying, there's specific members that come in just for the aesthetics class, but there's also members that stay after and do the CrossFit class later on in the morning after they do aesthetics. So it can be done both ways. I think it depends on how much you want to dive into this as being like an actual program offering versus an additional value add for your members. And like we've said throughout this webinar, we currently offer it to our members as a value add, which they can utilize, whether it's in open gym or if they're traveling or if they're at home and they have a home gym or they want to just pull up a workout that they can do wherever. So that's how we currently utilize it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways that you can slice this. I mean, even just brainstorming on it now, you know, one of the things that I know gyms do successfully is having like from a marketing perspective, having like downsell automations for people that cancel. Like this is a great way where you can say, hey, if you're leaving the gym, hey, why don't you pay this membership that gives you access to these programs so you can do it at home or continue doing this. You just have more tools in your toolkit to do any of those things without having to come up with the programming on your own. And that's also, I think, because I saw a question in the chat box, and Liz, thank you for going ahead and answering it. That's also a reason why we don't offer, like, you can't just subscribe to Flex programming as part of like NCFIT affiliate programming. You know, I think that there's a lot of value. We obviously think this to the program as a system and the session plans that come with the NCFIT workout. We haven't talked about Compete at all, but we have an incredible competitors program that what I think makes it so unique and special and has been super successful for us is that the meat and potatoes of our competitors program is the workout of the day of the NCFIT workout. Like we want to make sure that, I know you mentioned this in the past, that we're not creating a scenario to where there could be the cool kids club that's doing competitors program that's completely separate to class. One of the things that we recognized early on at NCFIT was that does no favors to your gym. So having a program that allows people that, hey, want to compete, need a little bit more volume to do that and scratch that itch in open gym, but having the understanding that, hey, the main part of your program is still coming into class is super important. So just long-winded way of saying that it's all kind of a system. It all supports itself. And that's why, you know, we'd love to have you guys join NCFIT affiliate program to have access to Flex, but that's the reason that Flex wouldn't be something you can kind of subscribe on your own. Paulius, are you planning to add warm-up? There are no plans to add a warm-up for Flex as of right now. You know, warm-up is one of those really interesting topics where, I mean, people get very, very, you know, focused on, is there a warm-up? What's the warm-up? Is the warm-up good? Is the warm-up bad?
Is it enough for some people versus too much for some people?
That's right. Like, does it change enough? Does it change too much? Like
Yeah.
We've heard every angle and piece of feedback on warm-ups. I think that, and I'll let MDV, you know, add to this if he thinks any differently, but I think that, you know, warm-ups are one of those things that are very contextual, both if it's a coach-led class or if it's just someone doing this in open gym. And while I think there is a lot of perceived value to, hey, the warm-up is taking care of me, specifically for a program like Flex, like I just always recommend, like, you're bench pressing, start by bench pressing the empty bar, build a little bit, you'll get to your working weights and go from there. I think that there's very minimal value to anything that's like more creative or more kind of complex than that. So that's a reason why I don't think that we'll be adding warm-ups to Flex anytime soon. MDB, anything to add there?
No, I mean, our coaches who author and test our NCFIT workouts and the briefs associated with it, they spend a lot of time crafting those warm-ups, and they take it from a perspective of what they think the class would need for that. But at the end of the day, it's ultimately up to the coach and whoever is running that experience to give the athletes what they need, the athletes who are actually standing in front of them, what they need that day. And with a program like Flex, it's even more athlete specific, I think. And like, what do you need to warm up before your bench press, or what do you need to warm up before your squat? So like Gabe said, no plans right now. And it also is cool to have a program in there that the warm up can be a little bit more loose, where you don't necessarily have to have a defined structure for it. And I know for me personally, when taking class and taking the aesthetics class over at CrossFit One Society, I like it like that. Like, I like to be able to do what I need to do to warm up for my squat, and then be able to talk to everybody while I'm doing that, and then get after it. So yeah, warm-ups are one of those things, even in our NCFIT workout program, that, you know, we spend a lot of time, a lot of resources developing those, and then they won't be perfect for everyone, but you always have to remember, like, it's the audience that's standing in front of you, and then how you want to bring your audience to the moment of the workout. That's really the most important thing.
Awesome. Kyle has a really good question that Jason loves this question. We currently do some bodybuilding, an accessory for strength, and our members love it. What do you do when you notice people switching programs between bodybuilding and CrossFit on days when certain movements are programmed, either things they like or don't like? In a way, they're kind of cherry picking. Do you just kind of let people be and go ahead and do that? My desire is always to help people, and I know some people will shy away from what they need and lean into what they enjoy. For example, air bikes, wall balls, and so forth. Jay, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, what's important is that your members, not only from a financial perspective, are coming in, but that if they're not coming in, they're not going to get in better shape. And so if you're constantly trying to force them to do things they don't want to do, they're going to become a little bit resentment over time. I would encourage you to find things like, if they want to cherry pick workouts and they're still coming in and they're training hard and they're getting after it, like, we're winning. And if you want to have a little conversation with them, just be like, hey, Bob, it'd be really cool if you rarely go overhead. And I think that's an area where you could improve. Would love to see you next week come in on Tuesday instead of Wednesday, because there's an overhead workout. And if the guy's like, nah, I just don't want to go overhead. Honestly, back in the day, I'd be like, no, dude, you got to come in on. Now I'm just like, okay, cool, man. Like, we'll try it again for next week. But I think the goal is just to meet people where they're at, educate them on why they need these different patterns or these different things. But ultimately, if they're coming in and they're training hard, they're in better shape than most people. And I'm just grateful that they're coming in. That's my take on it.
Yeah. The only thing I'll add to that is, man, like, I've been there as a coach. I think we've all been there at the point where you're like, hey, you skipping these things is just doing a disservice. And you're like, yeah, I just want to help you. Like, you just kind of want to shake them. But I've definitely come around. And I think that comes with time to approaching it how Jason approaches it, which is, hey, man, like, if people don't like a certain movement, you know, granted, if they're saying, hey, like, why isn't my squat getting any better? And they keep skipping squat days, like, that's completely separate. But if they're just like, I don't like doing wall balls, I don't like doing the assault bike, they don't come on those days, but they're coming other days, having a good time, sweating. I think that that's a huge win, and we should be able to kind of give them that grace. So a little bit of balance there, but I too have kind of come around to what Jason just said there. Justin, without having seen the Flex program, are the athletes able to record weights, reps, etc.? So yes. So the way that I write it and the way that the team inputs it into Wodify specifically is that the functional strength, the flex strength portion, almost always has a score associated to it. So people are going to put their weights, their reps in there. And that's the piece that we're usually trying to build on week after week. So they should be able to revisit that, add a little bit of weight. And we see that progressive overload, which is the king when we're trying to build muscle and build strength. For most of the bodybuilding section, it's usually going to be no measure. People can definitely add notes to that. But for that stuff, we're not looking so much to continue to build and progress like in the strength piece. So that's usually going to have no measure. They can still do it in the notes, but they can definitely add scores and reps and stuff to the pieces that we want them to. So yes, is kind of the answer to your question. Paulius, when they led aesthetics class on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, they always skip programming of Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. So I think asking in the specific example that you had brought up, MDV, are most athletes that are coming to that aesthetics class skipping the program in the other days, or kind of what does that look like?
So they've gone between different types of programs for their bodybuilding. They've used Flex, they've used other programs, and right now they're in a cycle in which she's programming the workouts for them. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday have all different feels to them, and the way that that gym runs their aesthetics program is a little bit different than how the current flex cycle is going. But in the past, they've run flex where the days have been chosen in Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and put in there for a full body feel across the week.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And it's good to have that insight. Really appreciate it. Alejandro, is it me, or there was a time where flex used to have like an endurance cardio days? So no, it isn't you. There used to be, what there used to be is optional extra credit in flex. And that was probably discontinued this year. And the optional extra credit would usually be like some core work or some like light running with like a little bit of loose structure. But it just ended up being one of those things where like it's a strength and hypertrophy program. And I think that what people are doing aside from that is so like different, because some people are doing this literally for BJJ, they're doing it for Hyrox, they're doing it to do CrossFit on the other days. So it's just kind of one of those things where the stuff that you should be doing extra to the flex strength and the flex bodybuilding is going to be so dependent on what you're trying to actually train in the gym for, or what your members are trying to train in the gym for. So we discontinued the extra credit. And another thing was too, like trying to make sure that like, you know, that this programming is 60 minutes. That's it. 45 to 60 minutes. And with the optional extra credit, it's just kind of one of those things that like, I mean, some days could be 90 minutes, some days could be 75. So we wanted to standardize that a little bit more so that people know exactly what the expectation is of how long they should be training if they're following that program. Kelsey, our current class times are 45 minutes for fitness program. What is the time length of an average workout? Answered this a little bit in the past, but just really quickly again, the sets are always going to have a range. So you're always going to see like, hey, do 2 to 3 sets of this, 3 to 4 sets of that. If you do the short end of that, you're good for 45 minutes, as long as you're not dilly-dallying too much. And if you do the long end, it's meant to be done in 60 minutes. So that's kind of the timeline that I programmed the program for. Aaron, do you offer video demos with the flex programming or plan to in the future? We have members that will participate in open gym and 24/7 access when coaches are not available. So we currently have an NCFIT movement library that does have a wide array of movements. It's going to have some of the flex movements. We also, on the Train Hard side, which is the app that we offer for people that are doing kind of programming on their own, we have a video library there as well that has very specific flex movements. So you can find that there. But the other thing too with these movements is it's really easy to find videos of that. We're constantly adding to our movement libraries to make it easier for you guys to access that and have like a single source of truth you can send members to if they're doing that. But you know, we're not programming anything crazy, and usually there's like 10 different video demos of all this stuff just available out there, but we are working on building that resource and making it more robust for people. And then last question, Seth. Our gym is on a military installation servicing a wide range of service members. Could you elaborate on how to roll this type of programming out into a tactical environment? My state puts on a fairly large competition each year for soldiers, and I could see the appeal of this type of programming, but I'm not sure how publishing would look. Thanks for your time. I think this is a good one. Jay, you want to take a stab at this?
Yeah, I mean, so Seth, next week I'm competing in tactical games. I've been doing a lot of shooting. I've been doing a lot of training. And I think where flex rolls into this well, especially depending on the type of competition you're doing, typically you're going to see some type of body weight pull up in most military style tests. So I'd say that this program could carry itself well to specifically a strict pull up. We don't see as many of those come up in a traditional CrossFit program. So I think something like that is like directly correlated. But I think where flex plays a good role is that if you're doing tactical training, let's just say you're running and you're shooting, and you're doing these different things, you're hitting different energy systems. I think that if you're doing that alongside CrossFit, you could beat up your body a little bit. I think flex is a nice way to incorporate some more slow, controlled hypertrophy training that will just round out the overall tactical athlete. And so I think that same thing for jiu-jitsu. I think that in jiu-jitsu, you know, you're on the mats, you're grappling, you're very dynamic, right? But all of a sudden, if you get off the mats, you do a little bit more controlled structure and getting your body in a different shape so you don't normally get into in your actual training. I think that's important. So the answer to your question, I think, would be a blend of it all. I think you'd be shooting, obviously. I think you should be doing some type of hypertrophy, flex style training, and then obviously adding some CrossFit and maybe some obviously long, slow distance zone 2 training to kind of round out this hybrid athlete that's strong, but also fit and capable would be a good blend.
Cool. Well, I think that's all the questions. I love when we go overtime because that means people had a lot of questions, which is always a good sign. But thank you, everyone. That was awesome.
Hey, I'm back. Sorry, I was muted. I'm just gonna drop a link in the chat really quick. And then, yeah, those were all really great questions. I love seeing all of those file in the Q&A tab. But that is all we have today. So thank you so much to Jason, Matt, Gabe for joining me. Thank you to all of you for always attending, participating, engaging with us. So I just dropped that link in there. So just a reminder, you can sign up for NCFIT programming at any time on the Wodify workout marketplace. And don't worry if you aren't able to grab that link right now. I'm going to email all of you these details. As always, you'll get a recording as well of the webinar sent to your email. We also post all of these on YouTube. So we highly encourage you to use this as a resource in your business, maybe show it to other coaches who weren't able to join today. But yeah, other than that, thank you so much for joining. We look forward to seeing you at our next webinar and have a great rest of your Tuesday. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.